welcome Mr. Bruce Cleaver, the CEO of DBS Group, to the AOJ Stock of the Day show. Mr. Bruce heads the entire DBS Group's global operations. And so tell me, Bruce, we have this COVID-19, one of the biggest and most unprecedented challenge in our lifetime in terms of health and in terms of economy. So give us a kind of a 360-degree view of its impact on the diamond jewelry industry. What do you see?
Thanks, Samir. So, clearly this is a serious economic and health crisis that the world is facing, and the diamond jewelry industry is right in the middle of it, like most industries. For us at De Beers, the first and by far the most important thing is keeping our people safe. So our first response to this has been very, very significant response in making sure that we keep our people safe wherever they might be. Now, the main 4 mining operations of De Beers are in Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, and Canada. So we've done a huge amount of work there, working with communities to keep communities safe, to keep our workforce safe. We have tremendous screening protocols, testing protocols, etc. We've also helping governments around the world step up their contribution to this. We've made significant donations around the world, but also we've sourced a significant amount of highly specialized medical equipment for our government partners to help with the testing, etc. And so, that's our first issue. Obviously, this has an impact on all parts of the diamond value chain. What we call upstream, which is mining, what we call midstream, which is rough trading, cutting and polishing, and what we call diamond jewelry retail, which is what you mentioned. So clearly this crisis is having a big impact on us because, as you know as well as anyone, most of the Western jewelry markets are closed, maybe starting to see some signs of coming out of that. India, as you know, we've just been discussing, largely closed. So some good signs in Bangalore, as you were telling me, of a little bit of release, but Surat remains closed. So there's no question this is a significant event for all of us, and it's going to impact on all of us.
All right. Exactly. So kind of you're working, you have DBS has a large presence worldwide in terms of, as you mentioned, your mines, then your marketing offices, then your trade partners. So I'm sure you must be in touch with all of them. What kind of a feedback you're getting in terms of what serious impact this COVID has made on their business, and how soon the businesses will resume, and and for the diamond industry, when can we see the demand coming back?
Yeah, it's a great question. So obviously, all of us spend a great deal of time talking to and listening to our customers, many of whom, as you know, are based in India. Now, interestingly, we can't do this face-to-face like we have always done, and I think many of us are looking forward to doing this face-to-face again, but I think we've been pretty good at dealing with this the way you and I are talking, which is online. And so we talk to them a great deal. We as De Beers have responded to the crisis, as we always do, by trying to do the best we can to ensure that we can be part of easing the pain across the value chain. So, for example, you will have seen we've reduced our public production guidance. That's the number of carats we're going to produce in the De Beers Group this year by about 25% from where we were before the crisis. And that's clearly so that we can produce a little bit in accordance with demand. We've also been very flexible with our customers, and we've allowed our customers whatever flexibility they need so that we can work with them and we can help them through the crisis. Now, having said that, there's some good signs already. China, as you know, is back up and operating very well. So about at least 90% of Chinese malls are open. There's a lot of footfall coming back to Chinese stores, and there's some good early evidence of quite strong diamond recovery in China. And we do know from our previous research that post-recessions, diamonds have generally done well. And as you and I were talking earlier, there are now signs of stores in other parts of the world. Bangalore is a good example. Some of the stores in some states in America have started to reopen. So I think there's certainly a glimmer of hope here. And the question, I think, is how we can work with the trade in order to get us through this period and come back strongly.
Tell us something, Bruce, about your relief work you have been doing during this COVID-19 in terms of your CSR activity. I keep getting some press releases. You have done some work in South Africa and some other work in US. So So could you share your CSR activity during this challenges?
Yes, of course. And it's worth saying that for us, I mean, CSI is not, like it might have been 20 or 30 years ago, which is sort of something that you do because it's nice to do and you do it as a side to your business. CSI is our business, really, because we operate in remote communities. If the communities don't welcome us and if we're not partners of those communities, of course, we have no future. And of course, as we know, people who buy branded goods, branded diamond jewelry, for example, really only buy them if the brands reflect the same social values as the people concerned. So this is much more than sort of traditional CSI for De Beers. It's core business. So as I said earlier, we started our response. This is our most important part of the response, is how do we help our people who work for us, the people who work in our communities, and the host governments who welcome us, Botswana, South Africa, Namibia in particular, make their people as safe as possible. So we've made already very considerable donations around the mining communities we operate in, $5.5 million, but this number will continue to grow. And we've done it as much as we can in kind rather than in cash, so that we can provide medical equipment that our and Anglo Americans' very sophisticated supply chain people can get into these countries. So, for example, last week we provided the first PCR machine, which is the very sophisticated COVID testing machine, to Botswana, set up the lab with the government, have trained the people who are going to use the lab, etc. And so we do a great deal of that kind of thing. Another thing that we're very focused on is gender, is diversity in particular at De Beers, and currently gender-based violence. And I'm sure you'll know all of this, but the statistics are really awful as to the increases in gender-based violence during the lockdown period. And so part of our response has been to make donations to and through UN Women, who we work very closely with. I am a UN Women he for she thematic champion, in order to help NGOs to help largely abused women find shelter or find support, because of course law enforcement is busy doing other things right now, so it's very hard for people who are victims of abuse to find law enforcement to help them. So that's a significant part of our CSR response.
Excellent. Okay, so tell us, you mentioned about your mines worldwide. Give us some insight, like in what stage are they? Have you already kind of they're getting back into operations, or they're still shut down, and what is happening with your mining operations globally?
So mines, of course, are very complex operations. They're large operations with multiple moving parts, and they need very careful planning to run optimally. So the first thing we did when the virus came along, and when a number of the governments with whom we work ordered shutdowns, was for the most part we closed our mines. But the objective was to close them until we understood the best health and safety protocols that we could put in place to reopen them, working with our government partners. Most of the De Beers mines are now reopened. They are not operating at the same level of production as they were before, and I indicated earlier that we will reduce our production for the year by about 25%, and that's in response to less demand caused by COVID. But they are pretty much all either now operating or coming back from being in what we call care and maintenance to start operating. But as I said, it's really important that we do it in the safest way for our people. So one of the reasons they'll operate at less than 100% capacity, apart from demand, is obviously we want to keep some social distancing in the mines. So we want to ensure that people are safe there. That does mean we probably have a few less people going into some of the mines. But as I say, they're all either in production at lower levels or coming out of care and maintenance into production. We will, of course, through the year continue to watch demand. Generally, we try and produce according to demand. So we generally try and tailor our annual production for where we see demand in the year.
Coming to India, Bruce, you see, we have this trade bodies like GJPC, who have appealed to its members to not import fresh rough diamonds for next, say, 30 days. So in order to, I think, to probably see that there is no pressure on the diamond prices, and they can kind of use their whatever inventory they have of the rough and use it for cutting and polishing. But India is a very big market for you. It's 90 to 93% of the worldwide diamonds are cut and polished in India. So how do you see this kind of appeal or embargo from India, diamond and cutting companies?
So the GJEPC is obviously a very significant player in the diamond industry and in India, and it's a body we've had a very good relationship with for many, many years, and we will always do that, and we work well with them, and we engage in a lot of dialogue. The way I see it, and we did publish an open letter on this a few days ago, which was to address this, is that whilst we totally understand that everyone in the diamond industry is finding the current time difficult, including us, the way I see it and the way De Beers sees it is it would be a dangerous precedent to set to try and tinker with a global supply chain, particularly in areas where there is demand. So, of course, where there's not demand, we are not forcing our clients to purchase. And so at no stage is our proposal that you have to purchase goods from us. We've offered our clients, as I said earlier, essentially 100% flexibility over this period. So I guess it's a bit of a balance. We recognize the need to assist everyone across the global value chain, but we don't think the right way to do it is to tinker with very complex global supply chains, because we think it's important on us as the diamond industry leader to try and help all of the participants in the value chain as much as we can. And of course, to the extent that there is demand and we can sell some diamonds, that puts food on the table for people who live in our remote communities in Africa, and it allows them, of course, to look after hygiene, and therefore it allows them also to try and protect themselves from the virus. So whilst we understand the sentiment in a difficult market, our position is we think global supply chains are efficient and that we should continue to support them as much as we can. But having said that, we've done a lot to help the Indian industry. I mentioned the production that we're not going to produce this year. I mentioned the flexibility we've offered clients. So we think it's a question of working together to try and protect the whole value chain across the diamond industry.
Right. So that means you're in dialogue with the GJPC and its members, and you hope that this kind of situation and companies will be allowed, if they have a demand, if they have a need to source it. But my follow-up question is, the apprehension is about the drop in diamond prices. So how do you see that? In 2008, when we had a financial crisis, we had seen quite a significant dip in the prices. What do you see during this crisis? The diamond prices going down and affecting the industry?
Yeah, I mean, you'll appreciate we don't ever forecast diamond prices, and we don't give out our future view of diamond prices. We are part of a very large listed business in London, in Anglo American, and there are rules that apply to that. What we can say is that, we've done our bit, which is, as I say, to kind of give people flexibility and to take a lot of production out for the year. I like to look at this more medium to long term, and actually I think the fundamentals for the diamond industry coming out of this recession will be very positive. So I think because this is a health crisis, it's going to force people to think more about the things that really matter to them, like personal relationships, which I think people will find going forward matter even more than they did before. And I think that's really good for the diamond industry. So we prefer to look at this as, how can we help the industry through a difficult period, and how can we get back to normal? But actually, we think there's a positive future for the diamond industry. It's difficult for me to give you any views on short-term pricing because, as I say, that's not our policy. And it's part of the reason we're offering people flexibility is to balance these competing needs.
I understand that. But yeah, there is a concern, definitely on the demand and the supply side. So I just wanted your views on this particular point.
Understand. Yeah.
Right. All right. Moving forward, now tell us something about your consumer insights. What you are gathering from, say, China when it opens. I believe there's a good pent-up demand. There's something called revenge buying happening there. And India opening in phases. We have seen now in southern India, of course, Bombay is a big market. So once India opens, because we had a large number of weddings this year, we had Akshaya Tritiya season, which we missed out. So all that demand, which is a pent-up demand, people are in India are expecting to come back during the Diwali time. So what's your plans for the Indian market in terms of marketing, and what insights do you gather on this consumer coming back and buying after this lockdown?
Yeah, so I mean, those are great questions, and of course the marketing team and people like Sachin, of course, spend a lot of time thinking about that. And it's really important that we take the learnings from this period and tailor our marketing to exactly who the buying consumers will be in the second half of the year, and what their buying patterns will be. So the US remains the biggest market, as you probably know, by some way. So we follow that very closely. We follow the Chinese market very closely and the Indian market very closely. I think, as you say, there are two interesting phenomena here. One is that all of the data we have is that coming out of recessions, the diamond industry has responded very well and very quickly. And so there's no reason to think this will be any different. Even interestingly, the 2008 crisis, which was a clear financial crisis where people felt much less affluent after that crisis, which clearly is going to happen again in post-COVID. But we do think there's a difference between this and other recessions, as I said earlier, and that is this question of personal connections. Because lockdown, I think, and I'm sure you'd agree, every single person knows someone who's been touched by the virus, certainly in the UK. And it's caused people to kind of reevaluate and rethink about the things that really matter to them. So I think you can see more. So you're going to see more marketing in relation to the personal side of things, I would expect. You're going to have more marketing in relation to relationships. But as you say, both in China and India, you may well have a scenario of two wedding seasons compressed into one. And that's obviously a really big opportunity. So you're going to see a lot of strong marketing there. Of course, there may be trends in which people might come back to physical stores slower than online, but they will come back to online. And so you can expect to see much of our marketing aimed at online, social media, etc. So we'll be up with the trends. But for the reasons we've discussed, I think there's a number of very positive scenarios that we can look to, whether it's Diwali, whether it's China when the wedding season comes there, and the US, obviously, hopefully will be back and running for the season in the US. And the most important time in the US, of course, is probably the last month of the year. And so if that's not affected, and we're back to normal by then I think we should be in a reasonably good position.
Yeah, I agree with your points. And that's the kind of sentiments I hear from the Indian retailers. They are very positive. They are hoping that we're going to have a good season 3 to 6 months down the line. I think it's all that we have to overcome this is short term, next 3 months of the period. Yeah, wonderful. My last question. Finally, what's your message for the Indian jewelry industry?
My message is, people are as invested in diamonds today as their parents were and their parents before them. And provided we all get through this period safely, healthily, with our businesses in reasonable shape, and provided we work together, I think there is a really exciting future for us. So I don't look at this period as one full of doom and gloom. It's clearly a very serious period, but I look at a period as to how we can get organized and get ready to respond to demand when it comes back, so that there are much happier times ahead of us.
Excellent. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bruce, for your taking time and sharing your interesting insights. And right from you have a 360-degree view of the globally what's happening in the diamond industry. And thank you once again. Stay safe, stay well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.